Today we are talking about our favorite three-letter acronym, ROI. So on this show, we talk a lot about dreams, and we want very badly to help leaders' dreams come true regarding their AV setups. But of course, dreams need to come into contact with reality, and we all have bills to pay. And so I want to talk about cost, ROI, and what is the total cost of ownership for some of these projects that we work on. And so we have talked before about how it's better to go with the $80 cable than the $8 cable because of, again, total cost of ownership. You're going to get things working correctly all the time. And then also, if you do it right the first time, you avoid having that IT person needing to pay him to run around and make sure all the AV setup works all the time, and they're double checking everything. And so we just want it to work right. And there's a little bit of cost involved with that upfront, as you can imagine. And so today, Marcus, I wanted to talk more about that story and go further into that, the ROI of when we want to establish this dream and really build the AV setup of our dreams. What does that really entail? And how do I think through that quantitatively from a budget perspective? How do I sell that into the CFO, to the finance team, to the procurement team? How does that work so that I make sure we have all of our ducks in a row when I'm coming to bring your dream together?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, a way to start with this, some of it before you start thinking dollars is even, speed to decision making, right? Because it used to be if you wind the clock back enough, I can remember, faxes, right? We're sending faxes back and forth, hopping on a phone call. You got to drive out to meet so-and-so. I'm flying out to a meeting. So as technology evolved and email was introduced and more technologies, some of that time and that there is monetary cost there, but some of that just time, right, to get a decision made started to shorten, and it's gotten shorter and shorter over the years. Well, when you have full-scale conferencing and, all these ways to communicate now that feel like they're in real time, I can share more assets, I can do spreadsheets and all these things. Now the time to make that decision has shrunk dramatically from what it was, right? Because now, instead of hopping on the phone and trying to call and talk through a spreadsheet or email it, and we're going back and forth 25 times trying to figure out what's happening on line 32, we just pull it up. We hop in a web conferencing platform. We can, pull up our documentation. I can see it clearly. If you're in the room with me, you can see it. If you're remote, you can see it. So by bringing in, cameras and microphones, cutting down on latency and, the delay that's built into some of this, now we're really communicating pretty much in real time. We're able to see the documents. So how much time did I now save the company? Because we can work our way through this in, 30 minutes. We make a decision, we're good to go. So in one aspect, we've greatly shortened that cycle for decision making, which at the end of the day, time is money when it comes to that. You don't want to spend a week trying to figure out something.
I love that story when I'm thinking of, different podcasts and things books I've read and whatever, where, you have a high-powered CEO, he gets paid a lot of money, she gets paid a lot of money. But the way that they talk about it sometimes is like, well, I get paid to make a few multi-billion-dollar decisions a year, a few decisions a year. And so if you kind of scale that down into all the different decisions that you have to make in your working week, different people that need to collaborate on things, a global team, and all the different media types that you need, audio, video, of course, screen sharing, like you're talking about. If you think about it in time as money and decision-making speed, that makes a ton of sense. I really love how AV can be cast in that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
and then, it really enhances it, right? So we do a lot of executive-style boardrooms. We do CEO spaces, things like that. So if you go into the boardroom environment, think about how expensive that meeting is, right? You have your CEO, your CFO, your COO, you have board members, all these folks coming out for a day or two. You need your technology to start on time. You need to be working. Everything needs to kick off, and be correct, because if you have a delay of 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, how much time have you wasted of your highest, your highest earners within the organization? And how much have you lost in terms of, trust currency? Because now the CEO is going to look at you, well, we'll say it like the young people, they're going to look at you sideways and say, hold on now, we just had this major board meeting. It was delayed by an hour. How do we make sure this is not going to happen again? We don't want to waste everyone's time. So that is one of the major, cost impacts, because if you think, oh, the room's down, we have to move it. Okay, well, maybe you can if you have enough time, in advance to make this move. But not just in the corporate setting, but also when we think about the judiciary, right? If you have a courtroom go down, now you have to move all of the cases. That's a nightmare trying to do that in the last minute. When you're dealing with higher education, are you going to scramble to find a classroom? I don't know how much you keep up with what's happening in colleges now, but trying to just rebook a class, it's pretty crazy, because those spaces are packed full. So when it comes to trust currency, that's also a major issue, that you want a functional system that has to do with, upgrading on a certain cycle. You don't want to try to stretch things out to the very limit, because again, it'll fail at the worst possible time, which really any time it fails seems like it's the worst possible time. But those are things you just want to factor in when you're thinking about the budget and what is, the hidden cost in terms of your user groups trusting that this system is going to work and having the confidence to come in, use it, and work through their sessions.
So in a way, it's thinking of an AV cost just because of the need, just because the way, people are working from home, people are working in globally, they need video, they need all these kind of multimedia. When we talk about decision speed, it's really efficiency from your organization standpoint. If we invest to make this AV setup work right the first time and work very well, and then all that speed that comes out of that, whether you're in a healthcare setting, corporate setting, government, judiciary setting, academic setting, it really is, it impacts the efficiency of the organization to a pretty strong degree. Yeah, that's interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And then if you think about also, the dollars in infrastructure and I'd say like land acquisition, putting up new buildings, right? This one really hits home in the higher education space. We do so much with them. But across all spaces, if you think about your cost to stand up a new building, right? And then you have to think to yourself, okay, if I'm going to spend, a new building, maybe $100 million, a large scale building, can I offset that cost if I said, do we need this building right now, or do we have the tools and technology available to enable more remote working, learning, whatever it is that we can feel confident in and it's working? Because now instead of needing, a building that's $150 million, can I reduce that spend down because I can empower these rooms with everything they need? And maybe this overall construction footprint shrinks a little bit and I get that cost down to, $100 million. Or do I delay it altogether because we say, hey, we're going to go, full scale remote with this? I don't get into the arguments about, RTO mandates and things like that. But if you're bringing folks into the office, most likely in large scale companies especially, everyone's not going to be there at the same time, right? And if you're global, you know that everyone's never in the same space. So when you're thinking about your building footprint and your land footprint, can you use technology and these, capabilities to offset some of that investment, which is, in the grand scheme of things, a much higher spend, capital expenditure than what we're talking about in terms of technology solutions.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, I want to go deeper there. I want to follow that up with what's an example of where you've seen that happen? Where because that's really interesting to think. Like, okay, I was thinking I need 5 rooms to do these 5 different tasks, but really, if you had one really well-designed room that did all kinds of different things, I wouldn't need those 4 other rooms. And it brings that architecture cost down. Talk to me more about that. That sounds fascinating.
Yeah. So a clear-cut example is we'll talk about at the higher education level for a minute. So for one thing, every university, college, what have you, they can't expand, horizontally if you think about their footprint, right? Yeah. If you're in a city, especially, you may be locked in. You have things around you. Sure, you can try to go vertical, but you're in the business of education. So then it becomes a question of, okay, well, how do we reach more clients, which in this case would be students? How do we reach more of them? Well, now your solution becomes technology, because you say, hey, we can't get more people in seats because we can't put in more seats. There's no more room to create more seats. But what we can do, and this has happened over the years and it continues to expand more and more, you say, hey, now we're going to do full scale remote learning. So when you see your commercials for all your, remote online campuses and all of those things, that actually spins out of the need to have it. And you can't just continue to build infinitely if you're a university. So now you start to outfit your rooms with cameras, with interactive displays, with microphones and all these technologies. So you may have a typical, classroom, and now instead of seeing the 30 to 40 students, once you take it remote and enable those capabilities, now you're seeing 80 students per class, because you can have 40 remote and the professor can actually see them with, if you do something like a high flex, which is hybrid flexible, a specific set of criteria for a setup, I can see the students' faces. I can see, are they getting it? I can interact with them. I can understand who's falling behind, just through visual cues alone. So in higher education, that's one of the clear-cut cases of, hey, instead of building outwards, let's build into this more technology. And then you start to design your classrooms to have that flexibility. So maybe if I'm just a instructor at the front, I'm teaching, okay, that's easy to do. We have, a few cameras. Well, I do a hands-on demo. Okay, also easy. We'll bake in an overhead document style camera. So now those cameras that are facing the instructor for the next class, they flip and go to the ceiling, and I'm, building a Lego house, whatever it is. Now I can actually pick that up clearly on camera and be broadcasting that as students follow along. Okay, next we're going to have presentations and sales pitches from students that are around the classroom. Okay, well, there's another type of camera that's kind of spins around and now it catches the students. So now we can make these classrooms, multifunctional, very, didactic in how they're going to work, and you're in one singular space.
I'm picturing in my mind those cooking videos on Instagram where they have like a camera above while they're like making
absolutely. We've actually done teaching kitchens. So yes,
that's cool. Okay, cool. Okay, so we talked in a previous episode about some of the different industries. We talked for a while about academics and some of those needs there. So go check out that episode for more on that. But I'm curious. So we've talked about CapEx cost and the investment in the AV installation, setup, design, support cost. But how does this impact the other big chunk of a business's cost, which is your labor? And where I'm going with that is what you just said about, now a professor can interact better, have a higher quality, higher engagement kind of class. How could it, because I could imagine there are certain professors, and I'm sure this is the case for other industries as well, but there's certain professors that can't do a remote setup in a traditional sense because they either don't like it, they don't have the technical skill, they can't see the students, or it kind of limits what maybe the professors could teach or who could teach in different slots. Have you seen anything where, because you have a very high quality setup, that it actually gives you a much more access to more people to be able to use the space, making more, call it like productivity or efficiency in your labor expenditures over time improve? Do you see what I'm getting at? Is that question clear?
I think so.
Yeah.
So I think one of the great examples of that is there's local university, and your description of professors and how they interact made me laugh because we've experienced all of those. Some aren't comfortable with technology. Some
I've had them. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. We've all had them. I know a guy that wants a chalkboard. And you think to yourself, chalkboard?
Exactly.
But with new inventions and new technology, that's okay now, right? Because now instead of, I need an additional person to come in here and take notes, or maybe my TA is taking notes, so we're trying to capture and all these things. No, I can get rid of that. I have Mr. Professor, he loves his chalkboard. All I do now is take a very special type of camera, mount it to the top of the chalkboard, and feed it into my session. And now I can capture, and he just teaches his class as normal, but I can actually capture his writing on the chalkboard for students that are now going to be remote, right? So you can start to cut down on your assistant labor. We've seen a university who's deployed a pretty awesome control setup so that they will have one person monitoring up to 5 classrooms at once because of how they're bringing all of those signals in from the classroom. And if anything happens, the professor can just press a button, a light pops on at their station, they dial the room up and say, hey, how can I help you? What do you need? So instead of, having one person per room, they were able to say, now we have one person monitoring 5 rooms easily.
Cool. I love that. I wonder, is what you described about the chalkboard and the camera, I wonder if there's a way to digitize those notes and stuff for students later or for other people later, that you can take a picture and transcribe or OCR the handwriting on the chalkboard. Maybe that's a little beside the point, but I could imagine a lot of digitizing the actual notes in the classroom for online students and different needs later. I can imagine, they want to teach this class another professor could teach his class. Well, now he's got notes from another professor, or I mean, I could just imagine there's a lot of efficiency gained by digitizing everything as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that expands, we talk about higher education, but that expands into the corporate arena, anywhere you're communicating, right? Because we see everyone has a whiteboard somewhere. Everyone wants to brainstorm and do all these things. Yeah. Okay, well, some of us, I may whiteboard on my laptop. Everyone doesn't do that. So for the traditional, hey, I want my red marker, my black marker. Okay, you've got the green marker. Let's do our SWOT on the whiteboard. You can still capture that through technology in real time and then tie in folks that can't make it to the meeting. So again, in travel costs and just scheduling costs, trying to juggle schedules. I mean, we've all been on the invite from Microsoft where you have 20 people trying to coordinate and one person replies all saying, I'm not available that day. So now you're spinning out of control. Hey, don't even bother. We'll just go remote. There's still some timing things to figure out, but it's much easier and much more cost effective than saying, okay, let's all of us head over to the office, sit around the table all day, get this done. Every tool that we need, we can actually bring it into that environment now remotely. And it's just really a matter of thinking through where you're going, in your business. How do you operate? How do your users work? What's actually happening? So that gets back to, those early conversations on, what are we doing today and how do we want to work tomorrow?
You'll make fun of my setup, but when I have to do some whiteboarding in person for a brainstorming or strategy session, of course, you use the whiteboard, and I record everything now with my iPad. I set it up on the desk and face the whiteboard. And then after you're done, I know you've seen this 100 times, is you pull out your phone and you take a picture of your whiteboard, and then you drop that into Dropbox or whatever and label everything. So cut out all that and save so much time.
There are services and hardware components that just tie all that together. It grabs all your screenshots in real time. It digitally translates it all. And when you're done, you just hit save.
That sounds great. Okay, sign me up for that one. What else would you like people to know about when they're thinking about the costs involved? Again, you have your dreams. They have to confront reality, and you guys coach folks through that, obviously. But what else would you like them to be thinking about as they're dreaming and scheming?
Even when you're talking about large scale expenditures and rollouts of new systems, also thinking about realistically, how do you manage your own dollars? Because a lot of times this is a capital expenditure. You're spending all of this money, all this capital goes out the door up front, and you don't have to. In our space to help manage this, you can actually do a lot of what's called AV as a service now. And so basically it's like your Microsoft license, right? You just pay every month and you have access, or your Google Meets license or what have you, G Suite. Yeah. But you can do that with AV now. We've seen that over the years come up more and more, so that, instead of spending all of that upfront, those upfront dollars, what you basically do is just capitalize it over 5 years. And at the end of that 5-year period, it just refreshes. And so essentially you could have a building that's just automatically refreshing every 5 years, and all you're doing is paying a monthly fee. So we've seen that deployed, and some companies really like that because it also helps you where now, instead of being a CapEx hit, it's an OpEx, and it's just handled differently financially for you. Yeah. And it makes life a little bit easier for some folks that need to do that.
Yeah, interesting. Now, I can understand time value of money. You would want to front load that as much as you could, but I love the idea of smoothing out your cash flow in that way, especially if you want to invest it somewhere else, up front.
Right.
But to your point, you're gonna have to upgrade all this stuff anyway. This is the nature of technology. Cameras get better, processors get better, cables get better, et cetera, et cetera. I love that idea of being able to refresh. It's like the phone upgrade plan. I just amortize that cost over 2 years. I know I'm going to upgrade it because I'm going to have to. So I'll hit that upgrade in 2 years. That sounds
great. Yeah, exactly. Same thing. Yeah. Hey, every 5 years you got a new display.
Fascinating. Okay. Well, this has been super helpful. Anything else that you found interesting, or any kind of unique insights when you're thinking about, any kind of unique case studies you've seen that have really proven to save a lot of money over time, or anything like that?
No, I've seen a couple, and they really just talk about the power of, the right technology and how it's being deployed and better decision making. So I saw one, and we've talked about it briefly, but, if you're in a meeting and especially as finance, well, say you have an under-designed system. So you're looking, there's an issue with a number, and it's being shown on a spreadsheet on a display, but if the proper display wasn't used, so it's not large enough, it slows down your ability to catch an error, right? So maybe you don't speak up because you can't clearly see it and you're not comfortable. Maybe the next day you're reviewing it, now you comment. So in a way, there's also a loss when you don't really think about this technology and you don't really go all in on like, okay, what are the standards? What are the recommendations? And again, I tell folks all the time, this isn't about driving dollars. This is about math, right? It's getting the right solution in the right room so that everyone can see it, everyone can interact with it, everyone knows what's going on, and there's basically equity in the decision making because everyone understands and can see and can be involved in the process and feel comfortable with it.
Man, fascinating. I think about AV completely differently now. It truly, this sounds silly because I'm here hosting this podcast episode, but just the way that you're framing it, like think of AV as decision speed. That to me is like, boom, light bulb, done. Yeah, I love that.
Absolutely.
I love that. Cool. Okay. Well, Marcus, thank you. This has been very enlightening. Thank you very much. I'm excited about our next episode. Next episode, we're going to be talking about support. So getting back to like over time, there's different things that will come up. This is the nature of living in a world that suffers from entropy. There are things that need to be fixed and problems to resolve. And how do you go through the support process to get those things resolved? So we'll talk about that next time.
Awesome.
See you then.